So welcome everybody. Welcome to our Create Safe Learning Spaces with Google. Looking forward to presenting today on the hot topic of cyber security. Just a reminder, this is a recorded session. So if you don't want to appear on the recording, please leave your cameras off and remain muted. But of course, you are more than welcome to leave your cameras on as well. Just to introduce our speakers today and our agenda. So the elements we're going through today is all around security and cybersecurity and what Google does to keep you guys safe within your education institutions. So we're going to be covering why is it necessary to create safe learning spaces. Simon Fasolo and Ollie from Google will be taking us through that presentation, which is the and demonstration, which is the meat of today's subject. Then, of course, we have a very special guest speaker as well, which is John Lister. He's going to talk about some of his experiences of using some of the features and the features which have really made a difference in his school of Wakefield Grammar School. And then finally, myself, I'll just be closing out with how you can get started with some of the tools that are on offer today. So just, our speakers are Simon Fasolo, who is the Google Workspace for Education lead for EMEA, Ollie Trussell, who is Solutions Engineer, Google for Education for EMEA, John Lister from Wakefield Grammar School, and myself, Google Business Development Manager from GTEC. So hope you enjoyed today's session. I will hand over to Simon and Ollie, who will take us through our next section.
Thanks, Simon. I think Ollie might just take over the slides, just to drive the slides. Thank you, Ollie. First of all, thank you, GTEC, for having us, and for everyone for taking the time to come to today's session. We hope it's really useful for you and really great to be here. We appreciate the opportunity. I think just to get right into it, why is it necessary to create safe learning space with Google Workspace? We believe like it's such a problem at the moment. We've seen this increase, right? So you can see here, we're talking about the cyber threats to the education sector being at an all-time high. This is across education globally, but we've seen this in the UK as well. And we also understand that you're well aware of this. I'm sure it's not the first time you've heard this. So it's not about telling you what you already know. It's just we have to call it out because it's such a growing trend and a growing concern, of course. So we see here like the increase in malware. We see the increase we're seeing in ransomware, 150%. Increase there, and this is truly remarkable. Actually, this next one here, 93% increase there. I believe this is the phishing. Just in cyber attacks in general, targeting the UK education sector. That was in 2021 compared to 2022. So a 93% increase. And I want to pause there for a second because it's so easy to do presentations where you list a few stats, list a few numbers, and roll on. But when you really think about it, a 93% increase in cyber attacks over the space of 12 months is so alarming. I mean, let me put it into perspective. Think about it. Think about it on your street, right? Imagine if I told you that on your street, the crime rate increased by 10% or 15% in the last 12 months. I bet you'd think, oh, maybe I'll lock the door. If I told you it increased by 20 or 30%, you might be thinking, yeah, I'm going to get some double glazed windows bolted down pretty tight and put some grills on the front as well, or maybe even move location. So then you bring it home by thinking, okay, 93% increase in cyber attacks targeting the education sector, which, by the way, sadly, it's sad to say there's been research conducted that education is one of the most at-risk verticals, most underprepared verticals to deal with cyber attacks. And if I told you 93% increase, and it's like, yeah, but what are they, what are we losing? What are we risking here? Students' data, staff's data. It's pretty compelling. It's sad actually as well. So I just wanted to call out that it's a worry, right? We've seen the increase, but certainly it's been a drastic increase. And then when we look at the other side of the fence, so we've talked about like the external factors out there, which is alarming, but then internally as well, this is interesting, something that a lot of us maybe don't always admit to, but employees and human error putting data at risk. Now, nobody has to chime into the chat to admit if they've ever shared something by accident, but I'll do it. I've done that. I've shared things by mistake, and I can tell you right now, there'd be a lot of your students and a lot of staff that have shared things accidentally. Happens really easily, right? And 70% of IT leaders are saying that employees have put data at risk accidentally in the last 12 months as well. So we see that side of the fence, which is, so we have to think about the external threats out there, but we also have to think internally, how do we mitigate against what we see happening just by mistake, right? There's no bad intent there, but it occurs. And when we think about, the financial cost of cyber threats, it's significant. I don't like these numbers, not just because they're in USD, by the way, but because they're painful, right? So we think about these three areas: the ransomware payout costs, that's increasing year on year as the attacks become more sophisticated. Recovery costs, so even when in education institutions don't pay a ransom, the cost of remediating and recovering, it's not budgeted for, and it adds up. And by the way, when there are institutions, schools or colleges that would pay for their data to be restored, it's very rarely restored in full. It's kind of like the horse that bolted and you get your saddle back. It's not ideal. It's not an ideal outcome in any event. And then, of course, the cyber insurance cost. All of this that's happening in the market, everything I've just talked about, the increase that we see, it affects you. You're paying more now for insurance because of what's just occurring in the market, which is a real shame. And we've seen that climb. And the bottom line is, don't wait until a data breach happens in your school before you put the right security strategy in place. And I think it's just really important to share this. This is really why we're here. We want to, Ollie and I want to share with you and explain to you like how Google Workspace for Education helps you put a strategy in place for your users, right? Your staff, your students, to avoid any of this. And it's about, another way of saying this is don't be a statistic. I was talking about this just the other day, and somebody actually, a school actually said, we were that statistic, which is really, it's awful, right? You see the case studies, you see the use cases and the headlines, and they said, yeah, we were definitely that statistic. We were stung, and then we put, some of the Google Workspace features into play, and because we don't want that to happen again. But what I would urge you to think about is maybe don't let it happen at all, which is hopefully this presentation will help you with a little bit. So on the good news, when we think about Google at large, we never stop protecting your digital safety. And it's really important to reinforce this, that every day is safer with Google, as you can see by the stats. So every day, 100 million phishing attempts are blocked by Gmail. Every week, 30,000 unsafe websites are identified by Google. 74 million users get help from Password Manager. 700 million people strengthen their security with security checkup. So there's a lot going on, and maybe it's just worth calling out that it's so easy to think of like Google for Education and Chrome OS and Workspace for Education, and think about these things as separate to the larger entity of Google. But all of that is built on the same powerful, best-in-class security infrastructure that exists through Google, which is good to know. And if you're wondering, there are 3 billion Workspace users globally. So we're not too bad when it comes to security in general. But there's definitely things that we can help you with and show you how you can make your security posture even stronger. And it's probably worth even mentioning here, I don't want to leave Chrome out here. There have never been any reported ransomware attacks on any business, education, or consumer on a Chrome OS device. Never, not a single one. So it's good for you to know that. So when you put in Chrome OS when you're getting those Chromebooks together with Workspace for Education, it's a beautiful marriage, let's say, and a wonderful way to protect your community. Just really quickly, want to talk about what's available as related to security across the different editions. So I'm not going to go into detail here. I'm sure you're all quite familiar with the editions, but it is worth mentioning that in Education Fundamentals, which is the edition that's offered at no charge to all of our customers, there's some really great privacy and security protections at play. Automatic encryption, two-factor authentication, the Alert Center, for example. So there's already a lot there to work with. But then for customers that do want to gain some more premium features around security, we have that in Education Standard. That's also in Education Plus. Teaching and Learning Edition is more about the premium teaching and learning functionality. So the same.
Which edition was she done, please?
Sorry. Sorry about that. I'll carry on. And finally, just to talk to the value of Education Plus. So I think this is interesting just to highlight quickly that a lot of you might not know or might not be aware of the fact that we being Google, commissioned Forrester Consulting to do a study on what is the return on investment of Education Plus, which is the edition that has everything, right? So all of the enhanced security and admin control, all of the enhanced teaching and learning. What does that look like? And I just want to share, thank you, Ollie, for sharing those links there. That's really useful to take a look at the whole report. But just to share some of the big takeaways, we see here a 95% reduction in the number of phishing attempts experienced for customers, and a 98% reduction in IT labor to resolve those incidents as well, which is obviously very significant. And moving on, we see that really when it comes to like how much time we saved, it was valued around $73,000 over 3 years of time saved improving security through Education Plus. So that's pretty good going there. I want to move to the next part of the presentation, which is, which will be more demo driven. I'll just kind of mention a couple of points here before we get to it. But the way we want you to think about this is we're going to be referencing made up city schools. Extra, read all about it. We're introducing the made up city schools and their made up but very real problems. So as we're going to work through a series of headlines, just a few, to explore features that help prevent those headlines occurring for your school. So if we move to the first headline, we're going to go with headline number 1. Made up city schools hit with ransomware attack, causing widespread outages. Just an ugly headline. I'm sure you've seen this before. Hopefully this hasn't been your headline ever. But that's what we want to put that up, and we want to kind of reverse engineer that. And this is what it could look like, right? So how about this? Made up city schools prevented a ransomware attack, avoiding widespread outages. See what we did there? Pretty clever. Nice little clever marketing trick. And this might not get the front page, but I think you'll agree it's a much better story to tell. What we're going to do here is we're going to look at some of the tools within Google Workspace for Education. Ollie's going to take you through some of these features that help you achieve this headline. I'm just going to pass to Ollie at this point. Thanks, Ollie.
Cool. Thanks so much, Simon. So hey everyone, I'm Ollie. I'm a solutions engineer here on the Google for Education team. Started my career as a maths teacher, so I feel a bit out of the box a little bit now. But great to see you today, and I'm going to take you through some live demos of some of these elements that are configurable in the admin console. So hopefully a few of you on the call may already have access to the Google admin console. For those who are brand new, this is essentially where you control all of your Google Workspace and Chrome and mobile management Windows 10 devices, if you have them, can all be configured online through this platform here. And there's some pretty useful things just to be aware of. So I'm going to start off, as I mentioned, just with configuring two-step verification. So we know that in practice, in the security section, you have this whole section dedicated to authentication, and preventing users from compromising an account is a really useful way to stop kind of accidental data exfiltration or manipulation of data. So two-step verification may not always be possible for particularly your young students, but anyone who is handling any sensitive data in your school or schools or colleges or universities, we typically recommend maybe thinking about kind of enabling this, so enforcing it. And there's lots of different options that you have available here. So for example, if I wanted to assign this just for an individual organization unit, or perhaps just for the teachers within a school, I could go through and select just the teachers available here. And then, for example, I could choose to enforce two-step verification from a date in the future. So maybe I want to give all of my staff until Christmas to turn on two-factor authentication. And you can choose how you want to do this. So there's a few other options you can configure here. So if there's a new user, you might want to give them maybe a month to set up their two-factor authentication. And you can choose to allow any two-factor authentication. So this could be as simple as kind of receiving a text message on a verified phone, or even use the Google Authenticator or a mobile prompt. Or if you wanted to really kind of add additional security measures, you can insist they only use a physical security key. So there's a whole range of security keys with very different price points, but it might be worth considering perhaps purchasing for some of your folk who you work with, your teachers, your staff who deal with particularly sensitive content that you wouldn't want to get compromised. And there's a few kind of options available for you here. So that's kind of context-aware, the two-step verification. On top of that, if you have Education Standard or Plus, you have access to the context-aware access rules. And these are really, really useful, so I'm not going to save those. And instead jump to context-aware access. So this is an extra way that you can prevent unwanted or unwarranted access to your kind of Google services or whatever it might want to be. So over here, if I just show an example, so I'm sat here in the UK, and I can go and access a service like Google Keep, but perhaps I don't want that to be accessed in a different country by my users, or perhaps I only want to grant access if they're on a IP network of your school, for example. So you can create all these different kind of access levels here. So let's imagine if I was a Swedish school, for example, I might create an access level that I can assign to any of these services where the geographic origin is Sweden. But there's all these different types of things that you can go through. So you could specify a range of IP addresses that are your school network. You can configure certain device policies or certain operating systems. So you could perhaps only allow Google Drive access on school-managed Chromebooks or school-managed PCs, and not allow access on other devices that you don't manage. So lots of different options that you have available here. And to apply these, it's pretty simple. So I can just go through and assign these access levels to users. So let's imagine I want to have all of my users in this demo organization unit, and I just showed you Google Keep, but maybe I now only want to allow Google Keep access in Sweden, for example. And I'm sat here in High Wycombe, just west of London. I knew this would happen. Quite regularly, you're asked to re-authenticate in the admin console. Always happens in a demo. Let me go back and try configuring this. So I want to only allow Google Keep access in Sweden. So I could go through and choose Sweden only, for example, and then go ahead and press save. So this is pretty nice. And I go back to Google Keep now. And because I'm in that organization unit, you'll see that I now don't have access. I need to update my my message that goes to folks. I'm obviously not in Australia, but this demo is used by people all around the world. But it's a really nice way to quickly configure and prevent access from users who probably aren't going to be where they are meant to be. And if you have any third-party applications, so I've got Adobe, I've got linked with Canva here, Mathletics, any of these that use single sign-on with Google and a SAML protocol, you can also configure and apply these here as well. It's also good practice just to assign admin access, perhaps just to within your country. If you are worried about kind of your admin accounts being compromised, it's a nice way to add an extra level there as well. And there's some new features that have just come to context-aware access. So one thing that I just want to give you an example here is if you are enabling two-factor authentication for your teachers, for example, and maybe you wanted to allow them to use a standard kind of like phone or normal password authentication on an IP network, you can say that if they're on an IP network, you don't actually care how they're authenticating, but if they're off network, you could actually require a physical hardware key. So it adds that extra level of security if they're on a network which isn't trusted by yourselves. So lots of really great kind of options available for you there. So moving on to a few other features, Security Sandbox is a really great tool. Simon, you got a question?
Yeah, sorry, Ollie, to interrupt, but I see that John actually just posted a little question in the chat there. Does context-aware access default to all on until you add in limits, or default off till you
Yeah,
add
great.
in?
So it's a really good question, John. So it's actually off at the top level. You have to physically turn it on, and then all the assigned access levels are just, there's no access levels applied at all by default. You have to physically go through and enable them. So great question. Hopefully that answers your question there, John. So I want to just quickly mention Security Sandbox here, and this. Sorry, hey Michael, another question.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
I'm probably going to ask a really dumb question here, so I'm going to embarrass myself maybe.
No dumb questions.
I've got my Google access open. I don't have the context-aware access. I can't see that. So is that because I've obviously just got Google Education? Is that because of the type of Google Education I have?
Great question.
Can I request it, or do I just don't have access to it, sort of thing?
No, perfect. Good question. So this won't appear for just the standard fundamentals edition. It's an additional kind of enhanced feature that comes with Education Standard or Plus. So as soon as you have Education Standard or Plus licenses in your domain, this will open up this element for you here.
So do I have to request that from Google, or do I have to pay for it, or the school has to pay for it, or?
Yeah, so
we'll come to that at the end of the presentation, Michael.
Okay, no worries.
If we keep your powder dry, I'll be able to talk you through any of those next steps for you, buddy.
All right, cheers. Sorry.
Yeah, worries.
Cool, perfect. Thanks for the question. It wasn't dumb at all. Yeah, and Mark's asked a question with some context-aware queries. Yeah, absolutely. I've got a support article, and I'll dig that out and chuck it in the chat at the end of this with some really good advanced examples. So more than happy to share that with you. So moving on, one other thing that's really useful, we know that typically most phishing attacks come in just through inbound emails, right? And so there's a few things that you can go through and configure. So in the Gmail section here, we've got a few features. So in the safety section, a few things that are available to all users are just kind of these elements here, right? So I really like some of these kind of spoofing and authentication. So for example, if I received an email from Simon Fasolo at google.com, but Google had 4 zeros, for example, I might want to be flagged as an end user that this is spoofing the Simon Fasolo I know, but also spoofing the domain name. And you can really clearly flag that to your end users. So it's really worth kind of having a look at some of these and just turning them on by default. If anything, it's just going to help your users stay slightly safer. But then on top of that, we've got in the Gmail, if I search for Security Sandbox, in the spam and phishing area of Gmail, you'll see I've got this functionality here, and Security Sandbox is really, really powerful. So it enables you to basically, with a check of the box here, if you turn this on for your users, then any inbound emails that contain attachments, essentially what we'll do is automatically execute those in a safe sandbox virtual machine before it even gets delivered to the end user. So if we detect any kind of malware or any malicious content within there, we can choose what to do with it. So you can choose to quarantine it, move it to spam, entirely your choice how you want to configure this. So there's specific rules that you may wish to configure. So you can apply this only to inbound. You've got all these custom expressions. So whether it's simple content, you could look for certain elements here, but a really, really useful additional tool that you can turn on with Education Plus. And Simon Hall will speak towards those elements a bit more detail later. And throughout here, there's lots of just really great things. All right, so you may want to get an alert as an admin if something malicious or doesn't look quite right. So there's a whole heap of rules that you can go through and configure. So I'm just going to leave this page. You can create what's called activity rules. And I've got a few examples here. So maybe I've configured this one here for bulk file deletion as a great example, right? So I may want to get alerted as an admin if I get a much more than normal kind of amount of drive file deletes, because that could flag to me that, hey, something's up. Maybe there's an account that's been compromised, or someone's granted access to something that shouldn't be here. So you'll see this is quite nice because I can just go through and investigate this rule, see what's happening, and I can see that on this given kind of day, there was actually quite a lot of drive files deleted. And I can go through and view the details here. I can actually go through and maybe split this down even at the hour level. And if I want, I could take it a stage further and actually go and investigate this. And this will jump me from the rules page out to a investigation tool. And I can go through and really quickly, with the touch of a button, see what was happening. And so for me as an admin, it's really, really powerful just to go through and get an alert when something that isn't really great happening, and then maybe go through and investigate that very, very quickly. Hey, I think that's you hands up. Who was first? Roger, hey.
Yeah, just want to say on that particular note, Ollie, I actually had a school who didn't have the advanced features of Google Workspace, and they lost an awful lot of data through a internal, let's say, rogue teacher who deleted a large volume of content, and never did be seen again because it was done just before the school holiday, and it wasn't picked up till they came back, and they'd lost the 30 days to recover that information. So I've actually got a live example of that, so I can vouch how beneficial that could be for some schools or all schools.
Yeah, great point. Thanks for sharing. It happens more often than we hope. But yeah, just a really easy thing that you can configure. Hey, Simon.
Just a couple of questions in the chat, Ollie.
Yeah, cool.
So first of all, do we have any resources with sample context-aware queries?
Yeah, I'll say to Mark, I'll put a link to support article in there as well.
All right, I missed that one.
There's a question from Hamish around DKIM and DMARC and email spoofing. It's slightly separately related, right? So if you have multiple domains, it's basically, if your domains are very similar, maybe you have, I don't know, something that looks similar, you just test it and see what happens. But the DKIM and DMARC rules will apply as standard, however you configured those. And it's fundamentally if we detect that your domain name looks similar to what's actually been received. So like IKEA.com versus IKEA with an extra A, that would be flagged as the potential domain spoofing. Hopefully that makes sense, Hamish, but if not, just ask me to clarify. And then Chris has got, if you flag a phishing email as an end user through the report phishing tool, does this go to our IT admin? Yes, you can configure that as well. So you can either get an alert for all of these kind of activities end users take. So all of this, the events, and we've got the investigation tool, which is where I am now. It's just a really, really powerful tool. And I'll show you just one other thing, and I'll pass back to Simon if that's okay. But in the security center, you've got this overall dashboard, which I absolutely love, and it gives you a flavor of kind of all the security activity and events that are happening across your domain, just in one place, and it's configurable. You can choose how these kind of look, but like seeing external file shares, and this is quite a lot. I might want to go through and investigate that a little bit. I've got all of my spam filters, and I can go through and investigate some of these. I've got things like OAuth authentications, and I can see which kind of scopes are being granted. I can see which kind of apps people are using. I can see how many OAuth grants have happened over the last 7 days, for example, to third-party applications. But it's really, really useful here. And so if I wanted to, for example, go and investigate this potential phishing elements, I can go through and view the report. And this will take me through, and on any given day, I could actually go through, and perhaps on November 23rd, I could click on that date, and it will show me all of the kind of elements that my users have received that have been related to potential phishing attacks. And I can see that please log into your account to claim a refund ended up in 4 users folders, and perhaps I wanted to maybe investigate that in a bit further. So with one click, I can take that, investigate who the users were, where it came from, and there's a whole heap of really useful stuff that you can go through and configure here. And it's worth noting that you've actually got the ability to configure this and investigate on a whole heap of different events. So Gmail events, obviously, but Drive events as well. Looking at Chrome, Classroom, everything's available for you here. But from a security point of view, this is really, really powerful. And I can see that this was sent from something that doesn't look like actually PayPal, if that makes sense. It was sent to some of the Weasley kids in my Harry Potter school. And if I want to, I can actually click on any of these messages, find out more information about it, like the SPF and the DKIM. I can see the raw header, which is really, really useful. But if I want to, as an admin, I have the ability to actually view the content of this message. So I could go through, and obviously because this is quite a restricted action that I'm undertaking, I have to put a justification. This is logged in the admin reports. So if you have multiple admins, you can kind of hold each other to account. But I'm going to go through and just do a phishing investigation. And normally you'd want to set up a process in your school that you get authentication and authorization from someone to go and perform a task like this. But I can go through and I can see, hey, yeah, this doesn't look great. I can actually hover over that link and see that that goes to a completely made up site in the bottom corner here. And if I don't like this at all, I've got a few things I can go through and do. So I can, for example, just select all these, and instead of this just sitting in their spam folder, I can choose to completely delete the messages. So trusting that they're never going to accidentally open that and click on it thinking it was mistaken as phishing. You as an admin can also go through and mark particular messages as phishing or spam from here as well. And with kind of one click, I can choose to delete all those messages simply by typing in delete for messages. So really, really super simple to go through and configure. And there's a number of things that you can do. So I could, for example, go through and maybe I want to pivot to the Drive events for a certain user to see kind of what they've been doing. So I can go through and have a look at all the Drive activity from Ron Weasley, and maybe there's something in there that I don't like, and I could just go through and take that a little stage further if I need to. So really, really powerful tool that you have up your sleeves. You can create activity rules on any of these elements and then get notified if something similar happens again. Just a really, really useful tool. I'm going to stop talking now, but I've got one question here. Can this be done before messages hit the end user? So yeah, as I said, our phishing and spam classifications are kind of best in class. They're very, very powerful. Some people choose to have an additional kind of spam filter on your inbound gateway before it even hits Gmail servers. That's absolutely fine as well. But typically most things will be correctly classified as spam before they hit the end user. Cool. Simon, back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Ollie. Thank you very much for taking us through that and for showing us the dash as well. And I think that one of the key points is as well, when you think about this, if you haven't had that experience of the security dash leading to the investigation tools, just how easy it is. You're busy, you don't have a lot of time, we know that, and yeah, you've got a lot to do. So it's such an advantage to be able to jump in, see what's going on, and if you want, or if required, to act on it immediately, because critical factor is time, to prevent something from sitting in there, embedding in there, and causing more damage. So thank you, Ollie. Moving on to the next slide, just really quickly, because I am conscious of time. The next headline we wanted to quickly discuss was this awful headline: Made Up City Schools confirm student social security numbers, or let's say, for example, could be students' health data mistakenly shared, impacting thousands. And ideally, it would read something like this: Made Up City Schools quickly updated sharing permissions on student social security or student health data, mistakenly shared, protecting thousands. So how do we do that? How do we prevent the accidental sharing from your schools as well? And Ollie, I'll pass back to you just to kind of talk through some of the features, some of the tools that we have in the tool belt.
Nice, perfect. Thanks, Simon. So yeah, there's a heap of really cool elements here. So I'll start off just by creating a new document and showcase some of the standard out-of-the-box features that you have. So firstly, if I was to create a new document, let's say I'm going to be writing a parent newsletter, right? And something I want to send out externally to users. So I could actually choose to share this, and if I wanted to, I could choose to make this available to anybody outside with the link. So I, as an admin, can choose which users can externally share and those that can't. Typically, we recommend that for most of your users, you disable this, but there might be some staff that you might want to allow external sharing. All of this can be configured in the Google Workspace section and Drive and Docs. And in the sharing settings, you can go through and you can block external access and block external sharing. You have a number of different elements at your disposal here as well. And I'll talk in a moment about something called trust rules, which is the new feature that gives you a bit more granular control. But at the top level, you can choose if you want to disable users from sharing externally. This is all completely granular. So at different levels, you could go through and configure this. So one thing that we quite often see as well is that sometimes users accidentally overshare within your domain. So maybe you work in a multi-academy trust and you might have multiple schools. There might not be a reason for a member of staff to make a spreadsheet with student data available to everybody across your whole domain, because it might actually go across different schools. So there's a few things you can do. So instead of me having the ability to share at the top level with anyone the link, one thing you can do is you can use this target audiences feature, which again is it's a plus or standard feature. And instead of having this primary target audience, I could go through and delete this, and I can add multiple target audiences. So I can choose like broad groups of users that you can make a file available to. So if I save that here and give my newsletter a quick refresh, you'll see that when I go to press share now, hopefully within just a moment, that ability for me to make this file public or across the entire school or trust is now completely gone. Now I can still share this externally, but there's a few things I can go through and do here. So one thing that I'm going to show is we have this new feature in Standard and Plus, which allows you to make users set a label, like a classification label. So we recommend something like this. So forcing users to determine the kind of sensitivity of a file. So I'm going to choose to make this public, and I could actually go through and maybe I'm going to say, dear parents, please email me at otrussell@google.com if you have questions. You get the idea. I'm going to make this public. I'm going to go through and share this and choose to make it available to anyone with a link. So there's a few things I can do. So the first thing I want to talk around here is this data loss prevention element. And you can configure this again in your admin console in the access and data control and data protection. And you can create these rules. So these rules are available to any user. So any addition, so if you have fundamentals, you can go and get this set up today as well. But I'm just going to talk you through two rules that I've got that I really, really like, and I think you should think about implementing. So this first one applies a sensitivity if an email is detected. So I'll go through and show how these rules are created. You can choose to apply them to the whole organization or just to a subset of users, whether that's an organization, unit, or group. You can choose whether this applies to Google Chat or Google Drive. And then you can actually choose content to look for and automatically take actions. So for example, we've got all these kind of predefined data types. So let's imagine if I wanted to, I think in the UK, right? So if it contains an NHS number or a passport number, you can choose to automatically block that being shared, for example, or do anything else that you might need to for it. So I'm going to choose to detect an email, and I'm going to apply a drive label of restricted. And then I'm also going to configure another rule which automatically will go through and block sensitive content being shared externally. So in the same way I did before, if I see this restricted option applied, I'm going to choose to block external sharing. And this all happens automatically in the background whenever files are kind of created or edited. And you can choose to get alerts. You can actually send this to the alert center. You can email all the admins to let them know this has happened. But just a really, really powerful tool. So I'm going to activate this. But this happens once you set it up on every file going forwards. So if I go back to my newsletter here, because I chose to detect email addresses, a few things have happened. So firstly, my file sensitivity has switched to restricted. And also now, this is now no longer available to be shared externally. And once you configure this rule, it's a really great way to prevent accidental data exfiltration from your domain. So oversharing is a massive issue that we see. And this is a really good tool to have in your arsenal to present that as well. There's a few other really great features. So Google Vault, I probably don't have too much time to talk about today, but it's a retention tool that allows you to maintain data for as long or as short as you need it. But then also very quickly, we've got in the trust rules section here, some really great features. So if you work in a multi-academy trust, for example, you can now explicitly choose to block users in one school from sharing with users in another school. So beyond just limiting the contact directory, you can explicitly stop the sharing. And right now this works to Drive. We're going to make it much easier for you to also do that if you wanted with Gmail messages, all in this trust rules area as well. So there's a heap of really great features you can do. And just one thing I want to finish on, Simon, just before I pass back to you, is you talked earlier about the beauty of kind of Workspace and Chrome working well together. There's a really great new feature that I can very quickly show you. So you see we've now got these Chrome actions. So if you have any Chrome devices in your school, you can see that I can now create these kind of actions. So this is an example where I want to actually, on Chromebook, prevent data being accidentally exfiltrated out of Drive. So I'll show how this works. You configure these rules in the same way I showed before. You can apply it to everybody or just an individual list. Then what you can do is you can actually determine, like, if a user tries to copy and paste content or prints content or screen captures or shares to a Google Meet or a Zoom or whatever it might be, you can specify a list of URLs. So I've here got Drive and Docs. You can actually put your own MIS if it's accessible on the web, for example, to stop data being screenshotted or copied and pasted from your MIS system. And then you can choose what to do. So if a user copies and pastes content, you can choose to block that or just give a warning. If they choose to print it, you can just block that. So this is just a really nice thing to think about, right? So perhaps you get to a stage in the near future where all of your users are accessing their Drive data on a Chrome device or a Chrome OS Flex device. If you only allow Drive access on these school-managed Chrome devices, you can be absolutely certain, if you applied these policies, that data is never going to leave Google Drive. So users aren't going to download it. They're not going to store it elsewhere. It's just a really nice way to make sure that all your data stays nice and secure on our servers. So a really, really cool feature that I definitely recommend playing around with. And there's no additional cost. It's just included in the Chrome Education upgrade there. So yeah, please play around with that. I'm going to stop now, Simon.
Ollie, thank you. And thank you for that extra demonstration too. Really, really useful. I've only got 3 really quick slides just to leave you with a thought. So this is the one of the final 3 here, which is you've seen before, but I just want to remind you, don't be that statistic. We would urge you. What we'd like you to see is on the next 2 slides. We'd like you to see you mitigate any of these issues before you hit the headlines. It's unfortunate when we see it, and we just think there's so much you can do, and we hope this has been helpful. And we just want to leave it there. We'll pause there and hand back to GTech. And that last point, if you're interested in some of these features and some of the premium features as well, GTech will more than qualified to help talk that through and explain what that looks like if you're interested in kind of getting involved. But also great to see some of the features that already exist within Education Fundamentals, and hopefully that helps you. Thank you so much.
Thanks ever so much, Simon, and thanks, Ollie. Really useful to see those things in action. I'm just going to take over presenting now, Ollie, if that is okay.
Absolutely, no problem. I'll put a few links in the chat for people who asked as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you ever so much indeed. So we're now going to invite our special guest, John Lister, to talk for a few minutes on some of the features that have really, spoken to him and that he's used in particularly within his trust. So over to you, John.
All right, thanks, Simon, for inviting me along. I'm also learning some new things here to do today, because Google are always developing their products and features, and you may have long since forgotten about that they were there, but it's great to know about. So we've been using Google Apps for Education and then G Suite, now Google Workspace for a number of years. Each staff member and pupil at our senior schools have a Chromebook on a one-to-one scheme. Now, we migrated our email back end of 2019. So at that point, having the right investigation tools and security became really crucial to us in making sure we had a system in place that we could support our end users and help keep them safe. And it's even more important now because more and more we're moving our day-to-day management functionality onto Chrome OS. So, before I start, Google, has already been said by Simon and Ollie, does seem to do a great job at preventing most phishing and malware emails. So no matter what, anything else, it's just, like it feels like they get millions of emails every day, really. and that's what we see. The fact that when something is spam, it's highlighted as such and might be a bit more than a bit dodgy. It says in large letters, this message seems dangerous, come on, hopefully that should warn most of our users to take care and not click on that on my example reply that I've got there. But even though Google's looking after us every day, everything that I'm going to mention now, it isn't an everyday occurrence for us. But it's when you need it, you need it. Like, so for us, the investigation tool is something that, like Ollie's pointed us at earlier on, it's something that's really useful. It's that one place where you find out what's happened in the last 6 months or so. And so we've used it for a number of different things. We've had the odd member of staff who sent an email to a pupil that they shouldn't have. We've been able to look and see if that email's been opened, read, or any attachment downloaded, then reach in and remove it from all mailboxes that it shouldn't be in. And this has given us comfort and knowledge that we've contained an incident, minimized it, or targeted the right people for questioning. Also, while I'm on email, the investigation tool helps us work out where something is and what's happened to it once it's arrived. Because we've had some emails disappear according to the odd member of staff, or an investigation, it's that were opened and filed instead of actioned or deleted, or they're actually under a label that they're tidied. Or one from me, never arrived because I didn't actually send it because it's still in my draft. So that's really helpful as well to just sort of smooth over any incidents that we've had. Like when I think about Google Drive, like as a default setting, as has been mentioned earlier, we prevent sharing outside our organization. So only specific accounts with users given additional training are allowed to do this. But the investigation tool has helped us when we've had issues where files have been shared internally with the wrong people. So as been mentioned before, as kind of examples that you can see who shared it and when, then who subsequently has read it, opened it, downloaded it, printed it. You can also pass on the management of drives to sort of trusted end users. And on occasion where we've done that, sometimes it's led to kind of a bit of too much restriction applying. And once again, with the investigation tool, we've been able to see where that change has been made and offer training to those members of staff. We've also used the investigation tool in Meet kind of during lockdown. Early doors, we had an incident where a pupil wasn't engaging with an online lesson, and they thought it'd be really funny to be a bit vocal and during that session. And the investigation tool at the end of the lesson, the member of staff said they had somebody messing about, and the investigation tool quickly let us know who'd muted and unmuted their microphone at a particular time, so we could take swift action and bring that pupil to account. So it really helped other staff then not have incidents because they knew what the kind of consequences were. So it was really helpful, like Google doing that. But in a way, I think final thing I'd like to just mention it for us is when talking about Google security and support, I don't think you could miss out talking about the online chat function that's available from Google. The top right corner of the admin console, right there in that little sort of top right hand corner, there's a little help assistant question mark in a circle. You can quickly get through to someone who can help you any time of day. As ever with many of these things mentioned here before, they don't happen often, and we need a little guidance or help getting to the result I need sometimes, or something just doesn't seem to make sense. Inevitably, if it's me that's called, it's out of hours, and starting a support chat more often than not has resulted in a timely, helpful response, whatever the time. 12 o'clock in the morning, yeah. All right, just before everybody else starts at 5, yeah. 10 at night, yeah. It seems like you get through to real people who want to help and are capable of helping. But anyway, I think that's the sort of like the broad brushstroke of features and things that we use. So I think I've used up my time, but after seeing what Ollie's been talking about there, like context-aware access is something that I think I'll be looking at pretty quickly at the end of this sort of session. So thanks very much, Ollie. Cheers, and thanks for Simon for inviting me along.
Thanks ever so much, John. That was really, really valuable. Just to see the fact that you've made use of those investigation practices and tools in your school, and it's had real world benefits to you. And yeah, I agree with you. Having the advanced support that's available through some of those premium tools is really valuable as well. So thanks ever so much, John, for coming along today. Really appreciate that. So we touched on earlier so there's a number of fantastic features here, isn't there? So how do we move forward from this point? Well, at GTEC, everything that we do is about supporting you, our customers, in best practice within education. So we've got a number of ways that we can support you from here on out. And existing GTEC customers who are on the call will already know that we offer a number of services and a number of features to be able to help you, our education customers. In particular, relevant to the security side, which is the hot topic of what we're talking about today. A number of the services that we are is around training, helping you guys to make the use of the tools that we've got. So these tools that we've talked about today, if you want to do a deep dive into some of these and talk through how they can be implemented within your school, we'd love to talk to you about some of those training services as well. The other thing that we've been privileged to do on Google's behalf and on a number of occasions is around auditing and health checks. So if you want to see if your Google domain is in line with education best practice from a cybersecurity perspective, also from a compliance perspective, then a health check service that we offer may well be something that would be beneficial to you in your school. So reach out to either myself or to Roger, and we can certainly talk to you about putting that in place. So a number of the features that we talked about today were included either in Education Standard or Education Plus. So we'd love to help you navigate some of that licensing. So Education Standard and Education Plus are licensed on a whole domain model and are based upon your student count. So in order to get the correct costings for those, then again, feel free to reach out to myself or to Roger. And we can talk about your student counts, number of staff members that you need, the ratio of student to staff licenses that you need in order to cover your domain. So we'd love to support you and help you with that. We'll be following up this call with some general information around additions, but all of the security features that you've seen today are all included in Standard. So Standard is the feature that you need to look for all of these back-end security and analytics features. Plus also gives you all the extra benefits from the teaching and learning perspective. But we can follow up and we can talk about licensing options with you so that you can get the most out of all of these superb security tools that have been demonstrated today. So that just leaves us then, if there are any remaining questions that haven't been answered as we've gone along, would like to open the floor, so to speak. Feel free to put them in chat or unmute yourself or raise a hand if you wanted to speak out. Fantastic. Ollie, you've answered all of the questions as we've gone along, so that is fantastic. So on behalf of Simon, Ollie, myself, John, we'd like to just thank everyone for taking some time out. We know how busy you are, so to come out and to listen to us about this important topic, we appreciate your attendance. So the recording will be sent out. So if you wanted to digest any of these points again, you can. Or feel free to share with colleagues as well. So thank you, everybody, and we'll catch you soon on our next session.
Thank you for your time on the matter, everybody.
Thank you.